In August of 2019, I was able to visit Six Flags St. Louis in Eureka, Missouri. I was quite surprised by this park and figured that making a review to give it justice would be the right thing to do. Let's start off with first impressions. This park is built onto a hill next to a major interstate, so as you're driving up to the park, the anticipation just mounts. This got me especially excited for Screaming Eagle because you could see it sitting up there at the top of the hill, and Screaming Eagle was actually one of my dad's favorite coasters as a kid. The entrance to the park was quite plain. It definitely could have been improved upon. It was just a few turnstiles, and it wasn't like the grand entrance that a lot of other Six Flags parks have. Another little nitpick about the entrance that I have is that, I love when other parks have like a Main Street style entrance, but here you just walk in, you go left or right. I feel like if there was a Main Street, it would help out the atmosphere of the park a lot. I'm going to give the park a B for first impressions. Next up is going to be appearance. I know that I talked about the appearance a little bit just a few seconds ago, but this part is going to be more on the appearance of the rest of the park. This is one area where I was actually really surprised. Most of the buildings around the park look nice, and the signs around the park are extremely clear. I actually found it to be easy to navigate as a whole. Something that really stood out to me was that when I was walking down to Mr. Freeze, there was a bridge that went out over the rapids ride, and there were trees all around the path. When I was walking through there, it really felt like Mr. Freeze was the only coaster in the park. That's a good thing because it helps to build up anticipation for the ride. The only parts where I thought the park looked bad was around the Screaming Eagle ride. There were a bunch of not working carnival games sitting there and just looked a little dilapidated, although the sign for the ride had a nice woodsy feel to it. Also, the park had the typical Takis, Armatron, Capital One, M&Ms, and Snickers ads scattered throughout the park, which just kind of like every other Six Flags park. I will give the park an A for its appearance. The next category is going to be the service/employees. The staff there seemed to be just like typical Six Flags employees. Most of the staff didn't seem to take much pride in their work, however, none of them were rude or really ruined the experience. This park had probably the most average employees I've ever seen. I will say though that the food lines are quite slow moving. For this category, the park is going to be receiving a C grade. The next category is going to be its atmosphere. Kind of like the employees, the atmosphere was just about average. They didn't really have any special events or fireworks or parades that happened when I was there, and the park was relatively empty as kids in the area had just gone back to school. The atmosphere of this park is going to be receiving a C grade. The next category is going to be the park's food. While I was at the park, I only ate lunch and got some ice cream, so someone who visits the park more often will have a better idea of how good the food is. But from what I saw, I didn't really have any issues other than the slow-moving lines. There was a large variety of different foods that were scattered throughout the park, and it wasn't just typical amusement park food like pizzas and burgers. They did have some stuff like Chinese and Mexican food. For lunch, I just decided to get some chicken tenders and fries from Hurricane Harbor. The tenders were surprisingly not dry, and the fries were actually hot. I did, however, notice that Hurricane Harbor could use some more food options. For food, Six Flags St. Louis will be getting an A- grade. The next category that we're going to talk about is the water park. If I had to find one negative part of the park, it'd probably be the water park. For most parks, like Hershey Park, the water park not being great isn't that bad because it's not the focus of the park. But at Six Flags St. Louis, the majority of the guests were actually in the water parks. The selection of water slides was not very large and didn't help that Bonsai Pipelines was completely shut down. At all the slides, there were not nearly enough tubes, which added on to the already long wait. The slides also desperately needed a repaint. I actually ended up spending about 45 minutes in the water park. I originally planned on spending longer, but it just didn't seem worth it. Like I previously mentioned, there weren't many food options, plus the bathrooms are atrocious. They look as if they hadn't been cleaned in days. One positive about the water park though is that the wave pool is pretty cool. It had a volcano looming over it, which is a great aesthetic. For the water park, it will be unfortunately receiving a D grade. The coasters were one of the most surprising things about my trip to the park. There wasn't a single one that I didn't at least somewhat enjoy. Yes, I even enjoyed Ninja. Call me crazy in the comments below. People say the park doesn't really have a standout coaster. I disagree with that. American Thunder is perhaps one of the most underappreciated coasters that I've ridden. It was even my number one Woody for about a week until I rode Goliath at Great America. Beyond that, they have a monster lateral machine, a cloned but still intense invert, and perhaps one of the most intense coasters I've ever ridden in Mr. Freeze. Unfortunately, Screaming Eagles down the entire time that I was there, which was unfortunate because it was the thing that I was looking forward to the most. Another thing that I noticed was that they did not have a kiddie coaster, so I have a feeling that a Zamperla Family Gravity coaster will be in their future. All their coasters are just plain fun, so I will be giving them an A-. Our final topic of the day will be the non-coaster rides that Six Flags St. Louis has. I was also taken back by the number and quality of the non-coaster rides that they have. The rides I rode were the Log Flume and Justice League Battle for Metropolis, Skyscreamer, and Superman Tower of Power, and the Rapids ride. All of these I had a good time on, and I would consider Superman the best drop tower I've ever been on. The Log Flume, my third favorite log flume behind Splash Mountain and Dudley Do-Right Strip Softballs. I'm also seriously regretting not hopping on Supergirl Skyflyer. I have no idea what I was thinking. If I had to critique the selection of flats, I would say that they need more kiddie rides. While their kiddie section is nice, it's not big enough to be the only kiddie section of the park. If I was in charge, I would actually have the 2021 edition be a kiddie expansion with a kiddie coaster or two in order to drive more families to the park. In terms of non-coaster rides, Six Flags St. Louis will be receiving an A- grade. So that's it. Using my scoring system, the final grade for Six Flags St. Louis is 835 out of 1,000 possible points, or in other words, a B. Six Flags St. Louis is an extremely underrated park. I wouldn't say it's a park that you should travel thousands of miles to see, but if you're in the area, go ahead and check it out. Thank you guys for watching the video. If you have any thoughts or suggestions for how I can improve the video or ideas for another video, please let me know in the comments below.